Our autistic son committed suicide, and the other children blamed us. We don't know what to do. This is an Am I the Asshole post as well as an asking for advice. Sorry for the long text, but please read the whole thing as there are many important details in it that I couldn't fit into the TLDR. My husband, 59, and I, 50, have had 3 children, James, 27, Kate, 23, and Stephen, 20. When he was 6, Stephen got diagnosed with autism, and we did everything to accommodate him and get help. He kept saying that he doesn't want any help and wants to be treated like a normal person. We always tried to reassure him that he needs it to achieve the same results as other kids and he should accept himself and be proud and not listen to society or other people. By the way, everyone was always super accepting and did their best to accommodate, but Stephen wouldn't listen and said that he's as competent as other people, and was it before he got diagnosed and we started treating him like a subhuman too. Whenever someone would try to help him, he immediately started to explain that he doesn't want or need any help and came up with excuses. As he grew older, Stephen distanced himself from other people because he didn't want anyone to know him as an autistic person. He even asked us to let him change schools and not tell anyone at the new school about his condition, which we of course didn't allow. By the time he was in his early teens, he fell into a really bad depression and became suicidal, but refused to take medication or go to therapy to treat it because at that point he wouldn't accept any help from anyone at all, even if it wasn't for his autism. Stephen claimed that the cause of his depression was the special treatment everyone gave him, and he just wanted to live as a normal person. He tried to make a compromise that if we let him go to a different school where no one knows about his autism and stop treating him differently, he will get treatment for his depression. By then, James, Kate, and a few of Stephen's teachers were encouraging us to let him do it, but we still said no. When Stephen was 15, he attempted to kill himself by hanging. At 18, he finished school, got accepted into his dream university, moved out and cut off contact with my husband and me. He still kept talking to his siblings. He left us an angry goodbye letter in which he claimed that we ruined 12 years of his life, that we are the reason why he's still depressed and suicidal, and that he hates us with a passion. He said that now he finally won't be known as a crazy, stupid and awkward person who needs help for everything and can lead a normal life. We tried to call him and sent him letters and emails, but he didn't answer. Recently we visited him at his university, but he wouldn't talk to us and eventually threatened to get a restraining order, after which we immediately left. We haven't heard much about him since then, but from what his siblings told us, he was doing better now, although he still suffered from depression. Anyway, today he committed suicide. From what we know, he overdosed on medication. Kate, who told us the sad news, says that we shouldn't have given Stephen any special treatment, or at least stopped when he told us to, and that by treating him differently we basically drove him into suicide. She said that we've failed as parents and she will consider cutting contact with us too because she doesn't want people like us as parents. James agreed with her and said that we should at least acknowledge our mistake. Kate packed her stuff and left shortly after. She originally planned to stay for New Year's too, saying that if we want to keep a relationship with her, we should admit what we did wrong and learn from it. We, however, think that it's the fault of society with its standards and expectations and Stephen's own fault because he wouldn't accept any help. We're absolutely devastated. Is Stephen's suicide really our fault, and what can we do to save what's left of our family? TLDR, our son was diagnosed with autism as a child. We got all the help we could, but he didn't want it. In his teens, he became depressed and suicidal. He cut contact with us when he moved out. Today we found out he killed himself, and our children say that it's our fault. Our daughter threatens to cut contact as well. Are we really to blame for his death, and what should we do? Tomorrow would have been the 21st birthday of our son, who took his life almost a year ago. Posted November 28, 2022. Tomorrow would have been the 21st birthday of our son, who took his life almost a year ago. My husband and I, 60M and 51F, have had 3 children. Stephen, 20M, Kate, 24F, and James, 27M. At the age of 6, Stephen got diagnosed with autism, and we did everything we could to get help and accommodations. Everyone was super accepting and did their best to accommodate, and we always told him to be proud and not care about social norms, but Stephen still refused to accept any help and demanded that we stop treating him like a subhuman. No matter how many times we told our son that he needs help to get on the same level as other children, he wouldn't accept it. As he was approaching his teens, he gradually isolated himself from the world. He had no friends, no hobbies, and avoided spending time with us, although he didn't mind spending it with his siblings. He avoided other kids at school, and as soon as he got home, he would lock himself up in his room, and only went out when absolutely necessary. When he was 10, he also began to refuse to celebrate his birthday because it reminded him that yet another year has gone by and everything is still just as bad. He ended up getting depression and suicidal thoughts and blamed it on the special treatment we gave him. We tried to get Stephen therapy and antidepressants, but he refused because at that point he wasn't accepting any help at all, even for things that had nothing to do with his autism. When he was 15, he tried to kill himself by hanging, but luckily he survived. Stephen tried to make a deal that if we let him go to a different school where no one knew that he is autistic, he would accept treatment for his depression, and even a few of his teachers as well as his siblings told us to let him do that. But we didn't allow that because we didn't think that he would get through school without help. Right after graduating school, he was 18 at the time, our son got accepted into his dream university, the University of Oxford, and moved out. We didn't even know that he had applied to university and only found out from the goodbye letter he left. It was a very angry and hateful letter. He said that we ruined 12 years of his life and went on a rant about how much he hates us. He cut off all contact to us, but kept talking to James and Kate, and blocked us everywhere. We tried to contact Stephen from other numbers' emails and sent him letters, but he never answered. According to our other children, he was studying chemistry and biology. He always expressed an interest in those in science in general growing up, and in his last years with us also said that he wanted to get a PhD and become either a pharmacologist or an organic chemist, although we thought that would be too hard for him, and had even made some friends. My husband and I visited him at university at the beginning of last November, but he wouldn't talk to us and even said that he will get a restraining order against us if we don't leave him alone. About a month after that, he attempted suicide again, this time by overdosing on medication, and unfortunately, he succeeded. Kate blamed us for his death, saying that he repeatedly told us how much he didn't want to be treated differently, but we never listened. She has since also cut off contact because she couldn't and didn't want to forgive us for killing her brother. Our other son has also been visiting and talking to us much less since then. In just a couple of months, we have lost pretty much all of our children. We tried to distract ourselves, but with Stephen's birthday coming up, we can only think of him and our other children, even if they have abandoned us and he didn't like to celebrate his birthday. How do we get our daughter to talk to us again? Posted December 12, 2022. We miss him so much. Our 60M and 51F daughter Kate, 24F, completely stopped talking to us about 10 months ago. She did it because according to her, we are to blame for her younger brother's 21M suicide, which happened about 1.5 months prior to Kate cutting off contact to us. However, at the time of his suicide, he has already also been no contact with us for over a year. He left for university, stopped talking to us, and blocked us everywhere immediately after graduation, and we didn't even know he had applied for university. With the exception of one time when we visited him at university, and even then he didn't talk to us. Kate's other brother, 27M, still regularly talks to her, and we've tried to get him to get her to talk to us again, but he refuses because he thinks that Kate doesn't have to talk to us if she doesn't want to. And he also believes that our youngest killed himself because of us, even though it doesn't make any sense. She doesn't talk to any of her other relatives. We've reached out to her on social media, but she didn't answer, and although we knew where she lived until recently, we visited, but she was never home. According to her brother, she has moved to NYC this September because she enrolled into a PhD program at some university there. So we don't even know where she lives now. What can we do to get Kate to talk to us again? My husband's drinking problem is getting out of control. What can I do? Posted December 18, 2022. My 51F husband, 60M, has had a drinking problem for somewhat over 2 years now. He usually drinks vodka and occasionally wine and has 5 shots of vodka on weekdays and sometimes up to a whole bottle on weekends. When he drinks wine, it's even more, and he will even have an entire bottle during the week. When he's drunk, he is extremely angry, and although he doesn't get physically aggressive, he screams and yells a lot, and I basically don't get any real time with him, with the exception of the occasional few hours on a weekend, because he gets drunk as soon as he gets home on workdays and often starts drinking by around noon on weekends as well. His drinking problem comes in waves. With my help, he has managed to get it under control multiple times, and although he would still drink almost every day, it was usually nowhere near enough to get him drunk, but it always gets worse again. He only began intensively drinking about 2 years ago when our youngest applied to university without us knowing and then cut us off when he went off to said university. My husband felt very angry and betrayed, and he still is, and that's when he resorted to alcohol. Before that, he would only drink on special occasions like holidays, parties, and date nights, and even then he almost never had enough to get drunk. I feel like I've lost him since his drinking problem began, at least during the waves when it's really bad, because he's drunk most of the time and then all he does is just scream around. What can we do to end his drinking problem? // Now to the next story, story 2. Am I the asshole for returning to my career to escape the overwhelming responsibility of caring for my husband's autistic niece? / My husband, 30M, became the legal guardian to his sister's daughter, 17F, 2 months ago. She lost her single mom last year. My in-laws took her in, but they were too old. That was when my husband became her legal guardian despite my concerns. He told me that he would take care of her completely. We got married a year ago after 15 years of dating. I had a very successful career in a very physically and mentally demanding field. I had to travel a lot. We wanted to start a family and I agreed to be a stay-at-home mom. I quit my job a few months into the marriage when I got pregnant. Sadly, I had a miscarriage. Then his sister died and everything is on hold. In the meantime, I took a part-time job in a related field which allows remote work so that I am not bored out of my mind. My SIL was a nurse. She quit her job to take care of her daughter full-time. Her daughter has a variety of issues including nonverbal autism, a series of development disorders like dyslexia and severe sensory issues. My husband says that he does most of the work. But he doesn't. Since I am working from home part-time, most of the caretaking falls to me. She gets angry and has meltdowns all the time. She doesn't like the food I make and most of the time she ends up throwing food at the floor or at me. I am at my wit's end and it is just so emotionally exhausting. Around December 15th, my husband was working late and asked me to take care of dinner. She is very picky about food. The slightest change in texture or taste from what she is used to can cause a meltdown. She threw the plate at my feet and I ended up bleeding. At that point, I called my husband and asked him to be home ASAP. He said he wouldn't be able to. I went up to my room and told him I'm not dealing with this anymore. He came hours later and she was still crying. He was absolutely furious at me. He called him heartless and irresponsible. I told him I've had enough of both of their ungrateful behavior and told him that I'm going to my mom's and I wouldn't be back until New Year's. He panicked and tried to apologize, but I left. He called me every day asking me to come back. I finally came back and he told me that my stunt had forced him to all available leaves to stay home with her. He told me that he was glad I was back. I told him that I contacted my former company and got my old job back and it starts next Monday. It is in office and requires a lot of travel. He asked me who was supposed to stay at home as she cannot be left alone. He has no more leaves and full-time caretakers are too expensive. I told him he promised to take care of everything when he became her guardian and that it was his problem. As you can guess, my family supports me and his family thinks I am being extremely selfish. So I'm asking for judgment from impartial strangers. I eat her in this situation. Update: a lot of people were messaging me for an update. So here goes. I wish I could say things got better. My husband took a few days off to interview special needs nanny, WESH caretakers. He ended up finding a good and experienced person to take on the job. He hired her for 9 6-weekdays. One day, she ended up saying she cannot make it for a couple of days due to an emergency. My husband had a meeting he couldn't miss and asked me to look after his niece for the day. I refused and he took my car keys while I was getting ready and left before I noticed so that I could not go to work. I grew up with a narcissistic gaslighting father who did stuff like this all the time. I told him to come back in 1 hour or I will call CPS and once they get there, I will call a cab and get to work. He ended up driving back and this turned into a big fight and I told him that if he does it again, I will walk out and never look back. He apologized and said that he was just desperate. The worst happened 2 weeks ago. I needed to travel for a couple of weeks for work and I could not find my passport. I am a very organized person and I knew that I did not misplace it. I ended up calling the non-emergency helpline. They ransacked the house and found the passports hidden in his gym bag. It is a crime to steal passports, and they asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said no. Another fight. He told me that he needed me at home that weekend due to a social welfare visit, and he knew that I would not stay even if he had asked me. I kicked them both out of my house, and I told him I would call the police if he came near me again. My house is a premarital asset. Thank God for that. I told him that I would be filing for divorce. The welfare visit turned into shit as neither of them were living there when the worker showed up, and the social worker also knew about the recent call to the non-emergency helpline. So, all in all, she was not impressed with our bullshit. He came by 2 days ago. He told me that ended up moving in with his parents. They own and live in a small 2-bedroom apartment. That doesn't qualify according to welfare norms. He ended up asking me for another chance. He asked if I would consider letting him and niece stay until they figured it out, or she would have to go to state's care. He told me that there is no way he can afford rent in a carer and begged me. I told him that I could never forgive what he did. He knew my past with my father, and he still went ahead and did it. He suggested they could move in and we can work on this at couples counseling. I told him that I could never trust him again and that it was over. He asked me if he could get his parents to take in the niece or even relinquished her care to the state, if I would give him another chance. I think months' worth of anger burst that day. I told him that even though it may appear as if the problem between us is niece, it was actually him. He didn't ask me before taking her in. He did nothing to help. He waved my concerns away whenever I felt burnt out. He took on a responsibility without consulting me and dumped everything on me. He chose to take my keys. He chose to hide my passport. I told him things may have been different. Him, my niece, and I may have adapted and become a family if he hadn't made the wrong choice, at my expense at every turn. I told him to get out of my house. It was over, and I never want to see any of them ever again. I still don't know if what I am doing is right or wrong. I know people wanted some sort of happy ending, but it is what it is. I still have not started the divorce proceedings yet, but I will soon. For now, I am taking a break as it has been a very emotional and draining couple of weeks. I hope to see more shocking real-life stories happening around you.